It is just over 24 hours until England play their first game of World Cup 2026, of course, against Croatia. And I have to say, it's felt like a bit of a drag. Like, some of the games at the World Cup have been pretty good so far. I've not stayed up to watch all of them because I'm an old man, and staying up until like 2, 5 a.m. to watch games, just not going to happen anymore. But it has felt like a bit of a drag waiting for England. In some ways, I think it's a good thing because the likes of Saka, Declan Rice, they joined the squad late because of Champions League and stuff like that. So to give them a little bit more time to be ready is a good thing. But from a fan perspective, having to wait until Wednesday when the tournament kicked off on Thursday, not great. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to talk about the news we've had today about Livramento being out injured. Chalobah is now his replacement. Some thoughts on the squad in general. I know people have done that to death over the last couple of weeks, but as I haven't done a video, I thought I'd do it now, and then maybe talk about first 11 versus Croatia and all that good stuff. So, Livramento is out injured. I think it's like 4 to 6 week injury, so it's not like a super long-term thing, but enough that he needs to be replaced in England's World Cup squad. And Tuchel has gone for Chalobah. Now, in some ways, I think that's a little bit surprising that that's the route he's gone. But in other ways, it's not surprising at all because a lot of the picks Tuchel's made, you know, people aren't really sure why he's gone the way that he has. So the fact that the backup right back's got injured and he's brought a centre-back in to replace him, maybe in some ways we shouldn't be surprised. I also don't think it's that surprising that the first position that gets injured is the right-back spot because Reece James and Livramento are both quite injury-prone. So it's not ideal, especially when you're now one injury away from either playing Jed Spence, which I'm not even sure he wants to do on the right, or having to play a centre-back. Now, if Reece James can stay fit, which has been difficult for him over many years, we're fine. I think he's one of the best right-backs when fit. But if he gets injured now, that is going to be quite disappointing in terms of the replacement that gets called up, like to come into the 11. Personally, when I saw the Livramento news, I was kind of hoping that he'd bring Lewis Hall into the team or into the squad. Because I think if O'Reilly gets injured, it is going to be Jed Spence that plays there. And obviously Tuchel's got a plan. He's a Champions League winning manager. We have to trust him. But it still doesn't kind of make sense to me. So I would have liked Lewis Hall to be there as an option for left back, and then would have just had Jed Spence as Reece James back up. And then if something happens to Spence and James, you have to play a centre-back there. At some point, you can't cover all eventualities, but I would have probably gone for Lewis Hall or just bring in someone like Trent, but we knew that was never going to happen. So it's not the end of the world. Livramento's got injured as long as Reece James can stay fit, but whether that can happen, we'll have to wait and see. In terms of squad thoughts in general, it's not the squad that I would have picked, even though I'm just an idiot in front of a camera uploading videos to YouTube, so what do I know anyway? But it's not the squad that I would have picked, but I kind of see why he's gone the way he has in certain positions, and I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people make out. People like to go very, negative when it comes to England, like everything's this massive problem. At the end of the day, most of the time when you're talking about players that have been left out, you're talking about fringe players. You know, players who would have been like player 18, 19, 20 in the squad or something like that. Someone that's not going to get any minutes even if they were in the squad. So it's actually not that big of a deal. For me, the player that he left out which I think is the biggest mistake, is Lewis Hall, to be honest with you. I agree that Maguire should be in there ahead of Quansah or Dan Burn, but he wouldn't have started anyway. So it's not great that he's been left out, but I don't think it's that important either. Like lots of people talking about the fact that this is going to be a set-piece World Cup, so you want Harry Maguire in the squad. That's fine, but if England are ahead, you're not worried about Maguire coming on for set-piece threat, maybe to defend the box, but not for set-piece threat from an attacking point of view. And if England are losing and Tuchel brings on Harry Maguire, how do you think people are going to react to that? They'd want him to throw on attackers instead. So I don't think Maguire being left out is that big of a deal. It's a bit like, I don't know if it was the last tournament or the one before, when everyone was up in arms that James Ward-Prowse hadn't been chosen because if you get a free kick, you want him to take it, forgetting that he just wouldn't have been on the pitch. Like, he wouldn't have started and you wouldn't have wanted to bring him on as a sub. So, Harry Maguire, fine, I would have picked him. I don't think it's a big deal. Gibbs White, again, I get it. He's had a great season, great end to the season as well, scored a lot of goals. But ultimately, he is competing with other players in that number 10 spot. Right? I know he can play off the left as well. He could even play a little bit deeper if needed. But ultimately, his position in this squad is number 10. So that's who he's competing with. Bellingham, I just think is impossible to leave out. I think he's one of our, world-class players. Doesn't always necessarily play like that, hasn't maybe had the best season, but he's one of those players I think is really difficult to leave out. Rodgers, when given a chance under Tuchel for England, has also played really well. And then the other one, I guess, is Eze, who can also play off the left as well. Palmer's been left out. Foden's been left out. I really don't... people keep going on about Gibbs-White. Why is Madueke in there? Gibbs-White should be there instead. Well, Madueke plays right wing. Gibbs-White doesn't. So Gibbs-White's not competing with Madueke. He's competing with Bellingham, Rodgers, and I guess Eze as well. And look, you can absolutely say that Gibbs-White's had a better season than Eze. I wouldn't argue with that. But if we're now looking at it as though Eze's third choice number 10, does it really matter if Gibbs-White is in as third choice number 10 instead? I don't know. Lots of people talk about form should be the biggest decider and stuff like that. I think ultimately managers don't pick every player in the same way. There is not one set of criteria you have to tick to be in this squad. Sometimes it's form, sometimes it's previous England kind of performances, sometimes it's just who you've got. Do you have other options in that position? Like Madueke, for example, on the right. And look, I'm not saying I would have taken him, but the more I think about it, the more it kind of makes sense. Because outside of Saka and Madueke, the only, and this is going to be where there's a lot of comments telling me all these other players I've forgotten about, but if we're talking about natural right wingers, who else is there apart from Saka, Madueke and Bowen? Palmer can play there, but again, Tuchel sees him as a number 10. There's not really too many players out there. Rio Ngamoa did well in the friendly, of course, playing on the right, but he's still quite young. I'm sure he'll be in the squad for the next tournament, probably playing off the left. Max Down was obviously too young to take as well, just hasn't got enough minutes at kind of top level yet. We know he's going to be great, but it's too early to throw him in. What other... I should have probably done some research before I started recording, but I've not really seen many other names thrown about apart from Bowen. And I think the way that Tuchel is setting up, he wants someone that can take defenders on 1 versus 1, which Madueke is probably better at. And I think that's fine, to hold the width. Jarrod Bowen wants to come inside, he wants to score goals. Do I think Jarrod Bowen is a better player than Madueke overall? Of course. But for this England team, the way he's setting up, maybe Madueke makes more sense. And don't get me wrong, if we're in a position where it's 0-0, 89th minute, or we're 1-0 down and we really need a goal to keep the game going, and Madueke's through on goal, will I have confidence? Probably not. But I don't hate that he's in there. And who knows, next time he might not hit the post, he might put the ball in. To get into that position and to get that chance is a good thing. You just got to hope that next time there's a bit more composure and the finishing is there. So I'm not super confident in the Madueke pick, but I don't think it's terrible. And I think every time someone says Gibbs-White should have been in there, or Alex Scott or Wharton, they're not right wingers. They're competing with other players. So Gibbs-White, I'm not that bothered about. Maguire, also not that bothered about. I think Lewis Hall's the one. I mean, you could make an argument that Lewis, and it would be a pretty good argument, by the way, that Lewis Hall is England's best left-back. And that's nothing against O'Reilly whatsoever. I think he offers something. I'm more than happy that he's going to be our first choice left-back. But you could make an argument that Lewis Hall is better. Probably a slightly better defender. I think the thing with O'Reilly is he can play in midfield. He's got a threat for goals. And obviously he's got the height as well. And I think if you look at the way that Tuchel has kind of built this squad, he's talked about it's not the 26 best players, it's how they fit into the squad. Without him, I don't think he's outrightly said it, but he obviously wants players there that are happy to not play, that aren't going to cause a fuss as well. That's obviously why certain players have been left out. And he's built a very, I would say, Premier League centric, I think that's the right word, team. And I don't mean it's Premier League players mostly, because obviously it would be, it's an England team. But I mean in terms of how a Premier League team would set up these days. Lots of running power, lots of physicality, lots of height for set pieces. You think of the number 10s like Bellingham and Rodgers, those guys can run for days. They can press for days. And I think that's what Tuchel has kind of gone for. So who are the other players that everyone was up in arms about? Wharton, I get it. He's a really good player. I would have had him in the squad ahead of Jordan Henderson. But I think there's probably a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we just don't know about. Like Tuchel and any England manager really, a lot of the time they're probably just giving PR answers about why a player's being left out. He's not going to come out and say this player is an absolute nightmare to work with. He's just going to disrupt the camp. They just don't do that, right? And I'm not saying Wharton would do that, but yeah, I don't know. Bellingham and Rodgers were talking really highly of Henderson the other day. He's obviously in there from a leadership point of view. There was a tournament like over the last one or the one before where Roy Keane made that comment about the fact his card tricks must be really good. Maybe they are just that good. Maybe it keeps the camp in harmony. I don't know. But I don't think he's going to get many minutes anyway. And Wharton wouldn't have started because, let's be honest, Anderson, Rice and Bellingham is our midfield. And it's pretty great. So I think Wharton... Again, I think if I'm thinking about... So I think the four main players, maybe you could add Bowen to this as well. I think Maguire, Hall, Gibbs, White, Wharton and Bowen. They're probably the five. I think Lewis Hall and then Wharton would be the two that I'd be wanting in more than the other three. Like, put Bowen in instead of Madueke, fine, but it's the other two I'd be more worried about. So maybe we will miss them over the tournament. But I think overall the squad is pretty good. Like the performance against Costa Rica was decent. Yes, you've got to take into account the level of opponent. I get that. But it was pretty good. I think they pressed quickly and high up the pitch when they lost the ball, got it back, created chances. There was the link up on the left between Rice, Gordon and O'Reilly that worked really nicely. Hopefully that same thing can happen with Saka, James and Madueke, James and Bellingham on the right side. I think Bellingham looked good. Kane was dropping in. And this is the problem when you just sit down in front of a camera and you don't have a plan. You start to ramble in all different directions. But if you think back to the last tournament, right, all this talk about how do you get Bellingham, Palmer, Foden in the same team? That's what the whole conversation was. Obviously, Palmer got benched a lot. Foden played a lot on the left. And the problem you had was Foden and Saka, both, maybe Saka a little bit less so, but both wanted to come to the ball. Kane also wanted to drop in, so you didn't have many runners. You've got runners now. You know, Tuchel will be instructing Bellingham to run past Kane. You've got O'Reilly that arrives in the box as well. Gordon or Rashford, whoever's on the left, will do the same thing. Like we've seen it in games before. Kane drops deep, he gets the ball. Gordon just goes. Whereas before on the left, we had Foden. It just didn't work as well. So as much as there's one or two players I'd prefer to have in the squad, the way that Tuchel's going about setting this team up, it's obvious he's got a plan. And at some point, you just got to trust him. And look, I'm one of those England fans that tries not to get too irate and negative about absolutely everything that happens. So if you like that kind of thing, this is the wrong place to be. But I do think we just have to trust him. The performance against Costa Rica was good. We've got a really good squad. I saw on I think it was Stick to Football I was listening to earlier, Gary Neville said that the drop-off when you replace a player is not that bad. And I tend to agree. Obviously, if you lose Harry Kane, it's not great. Right? There's no one as good as Declan Rice. But if you take certain players out of that team, the level doesn't drop massively. Like Saka to Madueke, Gordon, Rashford. You know, if you lose Anderson, someone like Mainu probably comes in. I'd rather have Anderson, but Mainu's not terrible. There's a couple of centre-backs there. And we've lost with Livramento now. But if it's Jed Spence or Konza playing right back, it's not the end of the world. I don't know, actually, now I'm starting to think about it. If we lose O'Reilly and have to play Spence every game left back, that doesn't seem great to me not to have another left back. Anyway, I think the squad's pretty good overall. And I think the 11 pretty much picks itself. Like, there's going to be a lot of content about what the best 11 is for Croatia. I think 8 of the players probably, is it 8 or 9? Yeah, I would say 9, right? So Pickford, James. I'll come back to the centre-backs in just a second. Pickford, James, O'Reilly, Anderson, Bellingham, Rice, Saka, if he's fit, Kane, yeah, that's 8. Who are the other two? Oh, the two centre-backs. I mean, I was. It sounds like from the journalists that Gay might not start. That was kind of the talk, I think, before the weekend. It might just be Stones and Konza, who did start the last friendly. So again, that wouldn't be that much of a surprise. But I kind of had Gay down as the first choice England centre-back these days. And then it was one of Stones or Konza. But if Stones is fit, I mean, he's done extremely well for England over many years now, so I'm more than happy for him to start. And whether it's Gay or Konza, I got to be honest, I don't really care. They're both really good. So that doesn't really matter. Personally, I would probably go for Gordon over Rashford. I think if you're building a team that is good off the ball defensively. Gordon is just better at defensive work and pressing than Rashford is. I think that's part of the reason that Barcelona went for Gordon over Rashford in terms of a transfer in as well. And I think if I'm looking for a goal off the bench and I want to bring on Gordon or Rashford, I probably want to bring on Rashford. Now, that does sound a bit contradictory, right? The guy that's going to score, you don't want to start. But you know what I mean, right? Sometimes there are players that are just better off the bench. And look, I'd be happy if Rashford starts, of course. Don't think he's a bad player, absolutely not. But if I'm picking one, I'm probably going Gordon. So for me, it would be James. I would probably go Stones and Gay. Again, more than happy if Konza plays. O'Reilly, Anderson, Bellingham. I mean, again, ramble time. Anderson, Bellingham are right. It's got to be one of the best midfields at this World Cup. And that's not me like trying to be arrogant. That's not me saying that we'll win the World Cup, because we probably won't, right? It's not what we do. Although we are only one of 8 teams that has ever won it. Although it was a long time ago, I know. But on paper, it's got to be one of the best midfields at the World Cup. I think the Spain midfield looks good. I know that they got that 0-0 draw against Cape Verde, so people are a bit down on Spain now, but I'm sure they'll be absolutely fine. The Portugal midfield on paper is good. And I'm not saying England's is the best, but it's right up there. Like, Rice is one of the best midfielders in the world. Bellingham's amazing. And I think Anderson's going to go, like, we've all seen the £100 million plus. And you know what? It looks expensive, but I suspect it's one of those transfers that in a couple of seasons' time, people will forget about the price tag like they did with Declan Rice. And it's not to say that Anderson's necessarily as good as Rice, but I think he's up there in terms of the midfield options to play that position at the moment. I think it's great. Kane's obviously the best number 9 in the world right now. Like, I think things are looking pretty good. So do I think we can win? I mean, yeah, sure. But it's difficult, right? I was chatting to someone earlier. You need everything to go well. You need luck. You need players to stay fit. Your core 11, well, I mean, Tuchel's talked about 14 to 15 starters. You need the core of them to stay fit. You know, you need that odd VAR decision to go your way, or, you know what I mean? Like, Rashford sends Donnarumma the wrong way in Euro 2020 and then he hits the post. Like, these things can happen. But there's other good teams. So it's obviously not a certainty. But I think people talking about the potential route of Mexico in the last 16, Brazil in the quarterfinals. That could be Korea, by the way. I think Mexico probably will top their group, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's South Korea instead. I thought they looked pretty good in their first game. And then, will it be Brazil in the quarterfinals? Will it be Morocco? I don't know. But I think as an England fan, you've always got to be careful about the way you talk about the team, because we always get told we're arrogant and stuff like that. But I think if you could just remove all bias and objectively look at the England team versus the Brazil team, you can't seriously tell me the Brazil team is miles better. You could think that it's similar or slightly better, but it's not miles better. Like, Alisson good, Marquinhos and Gabriel really good. A midfield of Casemiro, Bruno Guimaraes and Paquetá, I mean, that is not as good as Bellingham, Rice and Anderson. Vinicius obviously great, Rafinha great too. But Saka and Gordon are fine, and we've got a much better number 9. So I get the heat in the altitude stuff and the fact that Mexico have lost, 2 games at home in like 85 or something ridiculous like that. I can't remember the exact stat. So it's obviously not going to be easy, but if we get through the round of 32 and you tell me we've got to play Mexico then Brazil to get to the semi-final, I'd probably take that. I think England can beat those teams, and if they can't, you don't deserve to be there anyway. So I think our first 11 and our squad are right up there. I think the only team that I look at, and I'm not saying England are second best, but in the whole tournament, I think that is generally quite scary, is the France attack. Like Dembele, Doué, Cherki, Mbappe, etc. Elise as well. Like, that is scary. Everyone else has got good parts of their team, but I don't look at their team as a whole and think, I really don't want to face that. I mean, Spain, of course, smashed us in the final Euro 2024, and if they can get Nico Williams and Yamal up to full fitness, right, they'll be much better than their first performance against Cape Verde, and they would also be quite scary to play against because they've already smashed us a couple of years ago. And Portugal have got a good midfield, etc. But I just don't look at any other teams thinking they're like massively scary. And what I'm trying to say is England can compete, they can do it. But will they? Probably not. It's difficult to win a World Cup. That's why only 8 teams have ever done it, and it's always fine margins. So to summarise, that long ramble, which probably wasn't of any interest to anyone. I quite like the squad. I don't have a massive problem with it. I would like to see Lewis Hall in there, but I don't think there's any glaring mistakes outside that. Again, I would take Wharton, and I do think Bowen's a better player than Madueke, but my hot take right before he hit the post from that open goal was that Madueke's going to come out of this tournament with a bit more credit than he's got now. And I know the bar is low because he's basically got no credit with most people, but I think he is a better player than people give him credit for. So that's my lukewarm take. So I think the squad's good. I think the group is winnable. By the way, I would not be shocked if against Croatia after all this wait, it's like a 0-0 or a 1-1 or something like that. And there's mass panic because they've not won the first game. The group's winnable. We should be able to finish top. The route looks okay. You don't have to face like Spain or anyone like that until the semi-final. I think you just got to hope that Tuchel gets it right. I mean, I've been a big Gareth Southgate fan. I know people will talk about the routes we had were great and stuff like that. We haven't beaten a top team, blah, blah, blah. Love Southgate, but I did always say to friends and that at the time, because everyone talked about sacking him, right? And I always thought, well, what's the realistic option to come in? Because that's always a thing when fans talk about sacking managers. It's helpful if you know who you want to come in. And while I was never for sacking Southgate, and I don't think we should have done that, which obviously we didn't, but I was never really the opinion it should have happened anyway. I did say to a few people, Tuchel's free. If you can get Tuchel, then I'm happy to part ways with Southgate, because as good as Southgate was and as good as he did for international management and stuff like that, like Tuchel's like an elite manager. It's a bit like Germany having Nagelsmann, Brazil having Ancelotti, etc. He could be the difference maker. Maybe he makes a substitution or a tactical change that completely changes how a game is going. I'd be more confident in him doing that than Southgate. So we've got the manager, we've got a pretty good squad. Just hope now. You're allowed to hope. You're allowed to dream. It doesn't mean you're arrogant. It doesn't mean you think that England are the best team in the world, because they're probably not. But it is possible. And you're allowed to enjoy it as well. You're allowed to enjoy it. Even if we don't win the whole thing, enjoy the summer. Beer, summer, sun, friends, watching England at the World Cup. It doesn't get much better than that. I do hope, again, I was chatting to someone earlier, I do hope we do it though, because I think to win trophies like this, you need everything to come together at once. And you look at the season Kane's had, probably won't go into another tournament with Kane on this form. Like next tournament, he'll almost be 35 for the Euros. There's not really another number 9 coming through. So, you know, I think the fact that Rio and Gamoa, Dalman are coming through, Bellingham, Rice and Anderson are all pretty young. There's still a good core there for future tournaments, but we're not going to have Kane for that much longer. And that is not ideal, so it would be nice. I didn't talk about the four. I mean, Tony is a bit weird, but I also kind of get it, right? He can take a penalty. He's probably the closest profile you've got to a Harry Kane. And I know people were talking about Calvert-Lewin a lot and the fact that he'd done really well in the Premier League, but I reckon, right, if you're like a mid-table team in the Premier League and you get asked next season, for one season only, you can have Tony or Calvert-Lewin. Forget about transfer fees. It's going to be completely free. You know, you don't have to pay his wages. It's Tony or Calvert-Lewin. I think most people would take Tony. You've got a chance at the end of a game. One of those two players is through on goal, Tony or Calvert-Lewin. Who do you want to take that shot? I think it's Tony. And Watkins is a slightly different profile, running behind. I'm hoping we don't need Watkins as much as we did in the last tournament, although obviously love him for scoring the goal against Netherlands. But Kane wasn't fit, right? Again, I'm going off on a tangent here. Kane wasn't fit in the last tournament. I don't think anything ever came out about that, but he just was not on it at all. I don't know if he was suffering for an injury, but he's on it now. So yeah, we just cross our fingers, hope for the best, enjoy the summer, and fingers crossed Tuchel gets it right. Be nice to beat Croatia first. Right, I'm leaving it there. Will there be other videos this summer about England or anything? I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. Either way, I'll catch you soon.